conversation is about the yoga that I'm about, the practice that I do, which is Jnana yoga, Bhakti yoga, Karma yoga, and Raj yoga. So we advocate in this as the purification process. So we do the Jnana yoga, which is researching about the nature of the self, the nature of Supreme Being, and our relationship with it, how to get back to it. Why are we suffering? What's the cause of suffering? What's the way out of suffering? So when we do that, that's called Jnana yoga.
Wow.
And then when we get devoted to that, that's called Bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga. And Bhakti yoga leads over into Karma yoga. Karma yoga, when we do everything, is surrender, submission, offering, a service to the Supreme. Yeah. And that helps us to think about the Supreme all the time.
Is it like Mahayana Buddhism?
Well, Mahayana Buddhism, I think Mahayana Buddhism. Oh yeah, yes, Tibetan Buddhism, yeah. Okay. Yeah. But no, this is just a yoga. See, Siddhartha.
It's like Siddhartha, or is
when
it like Osho?
Well, Osho he's definitely a yogi. Not no problem about that.
Yogi, you came to the top of the mountain. Here you are.
Yeah. Well, you had to be yogis to get up the mountainside, though. Well, not really. I'm just a brother.
That's what's up, bro.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, I'm just a brother. That's all, and that's a big enough title for me.
That's right.
Yeah, to be brother. But
I find it very auspicious and serendipitous to find you here in the middle of a grand speech.
Yeah. This is a beautiful place.
Yeah, it is.
Very auspicious. You familiar with Bhagavad Gita then, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay, well, good. You know, and the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna was driven up to the periphery of the battlefield by Krishna was driving his chariot. They stopped there for a minute at the edge of the battlefield where he could see the armies on both sides of the battlefield, right? Then Arjuna say, Krishna, take my chariot up between the two armies so that I can see who's here. You know, like Tupac said, you got to know who you're messing with. You didn't say messing, he put the F in there, right?
Right.
But so he said, bring my chariot between the two armies so I can see who's here. So when he came up between the two armies, he could see friends and relatives and teachers and uncles and grandfathers on both sides, with all the elephants and the horses. But the point is, he had, from the periphery, he could see the mountains and the valleys and where the water was and everything, where the grass was and everything else. But he had to move up between the two armies so that he could get intelligence about who was really there.
Wow.
At a certain point, brother, you see everyone is suffering. And I know you're probably familiar with Maya, right?
Yeah.
The illusory energy. So everyone is suffering. Right. And so as we awaken, we can see the suffering of every living being out here. Right. It's not like a particular race, creed, or color has a monopoly on it. Because suffering can come in the form of so-called natural occurrences, being caught without water, being caught in hurricanes and droughts and tornadoes and all kinds of so-called natural occurrences. Suffering can also come from the thoughts that you have in your consciousness, what most people call the mind. We call it the thoughts inside of consciousness. And they call it, according to the purity of our consciousness, it can attract certain thoughts. So we want to clean up the consciousness, so it comes back to purification. So a person might say, well, let's stop the killing. Just walk away. Or let's change the mind. But we say you must have purification of consciousness. Because without purification of consciousness, everything is dirty.
The thoughts that we're putting out.
There it is, see? And you got thinking, feeling, willing, doing. You see? So if the consciousness is dirty, it attracts dirty thoughts, more dirty thoughts into the consciousness. From those dirty thoughts come what? Dirty feelings.
They manifest into dirty action.
For willing, feeling, willing, and then doing, action. You see? So you have to clean up the consciousness. So the whole process, the yoga process, is purification of consciousness. And some say consciousness is the highest point. We say that awareness, one might argue, is a little bit higher than just consciousness. But we say beyond awareness and consciousness is intelligence. And that's reflected or channeled from that omniscience of your own Supreme Being. So the goal of yoga is union. You know that. Union with Supreme Being. So it comes with purification. But at the very beginning, we have to change the way we look at the self. So that's the revolution. That's revolutionary. Because most of us out here, we related to being a material body. So we're relating to being a material designation. So we're relating to be a particular class, a particular gender, a particular race, creed, color, nationality, and all that. That's on a material platform. But we can't make any real spiritual progress on a material platform. See, we're spiritual beings. Our supreme being is supreme spirit. See? We also call it supreme intelligence. And we say our supreme being no matter what name we call it by. We're saying that it's eternal, it's omnipresent, it's omniscient, it's omnipotent. Why? Because it's a source of thought. All these ideas about atomic energy and all this other stuff. And you know, what's his name? Oppenheimer was one of the main architects of the atom bomb.
Yeah.
You know, he quoted Bhagavad Gita when it was exploded.
Yeah.
And they say he went back to UC Berkeley to study Sanskrit so that he could read the Gita in the original Sanskrit.
Wow. But the Gita talks about a lot of warfare.
And you know why? Because life, it is said, is a battlefield. And not only that, but also in Islam, we talk about the jinn.
Yeah.
Some of them talk about the good jinns and the bad jinns. Right. As a yogi, we say all of those jinns are lust, anger, greed, illusion, madness, and envy in your own consciousness. So the real jihad takes place within your own consciousness.
Wow.
That's the real jihad. And the more we eliminate...
They got man doing for land and oil and riches, but the jihad with self, the war within self.
Yes, sir. The lower self and the higher self.
The lower self and the higher.
Because the higher self, that's the self in union, it's never died. None of us die, I don't. But we got the lower self, is always colored by those jinns. I know some say good jinns, but as far as the yoga is concerned, we say those lust, anger, greed, illusion, madness, and envy, it's what's causing us to hurt ourselves in the long run, to keep us down. Because it's always going to tell us something negative, you see? If if you make a mistake, it'll say, see, you're stupid. I told you you were stupid. You said, you'll never make it. That's what the lower self is telling us. As long as we're related to being the material body, we'll never be satisfied, and we're never making the spiritual progress, no matter how much money we have, how much so-called knowledge we have. And that's the mistake we're making.
Where does the ego come in place with all this?
Well, the idea is the ego, we say, the more we can think about our supreme being, the more that lower self, the ego, becomes zero. The ego must be effaced, see, because it stands in the way of us and our realization or experience of our supreme being. We say that is of the nature of the lower self.
Okay.
It's thinking I am the material body, or I am the mind, which is nothing for us. The mind is nothing but thoughts inside of consciousness.
Yeah, and I've always wondered where the word came from, the derivative. It's three letters.
Well, I tell you, I had that was an old friend of mine. He's passed on now.
Yeah.
He's an old country preacher.
Yeah.
He had 3 churches out in the country. You know, they go every week or so. They go to different churches, right?
Yeah.
But we used to meditate and talk together. And he used to say, EGO. You probably heard it, easing God out.
Oh, I never heard that before.
Yeah, but that was another thing. That's another thing we used to say too. But that's kind of most people know about. Some people know about that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's like the Buddha said once. People were telling him about how did you fall in this material world. He just remained silent. So we had a teacher once. He's called Munindra. Munindra brought insight meditation to the Western world. And Goldstein and Ram Dass, you probably familiar with Ram Dass. See that? You know, you got the stuff, man. You all probably familiar with this, right? But he said that we're not concerned about how we fell into this quicksand, this mire, this illusion, this suffering. Let's get out of it.
Right.
When we get out of it and clean some of this filth off of us, because the material world is more or less like an outdoor outhouse. Some of you might be familiar with outhouses, right? Yeah, but when I was a little boy, I used to look over in there, man. And there was a hole in the back where the air would go out, and then some of those bugs or worms would crawl out. But very few of them crawled out. Very few got out. That's why you recall in the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna says, out of many, 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 many millions of people, one will strive for perfection. Out of many, many, many millions that strive for perfection, one will seek to know the Supreme. Out of many millions who seek to know the Supreme, one will know it in truth. Then he says, and I don't know much Sanskrit. I don't consider myself a Sanskrit scholar. But we know a few key verses. Then he says, Sa Mahatma Saduryabo. Sa means such. Maha means great. Mahatma means soul. Saduryabo means very rare. So such a great soul is very, very rare. There's some folk out who know it, but there are some people who know the scriptures. They can quote the scriptures backwards and forward, but they have no experience. So one thing we can ask those who, even you can ask Brother Peace right now, have you experienced what you're talking about? If he wants to, have you ever heard of Vivekananda?
Yeah.
Ram Krishna?
Yeah.
Oh man, you're in good company now. I'm in good company to have your association. I think all of you probably familiar with this stuff. Well, that's very good. Well, that's very good, man, because you know Ram Krishna had no formal education.
Nope.
So-called formal education. But his major disciple was Vivekananda.
Yeah.
And Vivekananda was a good associate of Tesla. They met in 1890, it was 1893 at the Parliament of World Religions in Chicago.
I did not know that.
Yeah, yeah, man, Tesla was into the knowledge.
Yeah, I mean,
Egyptian stuff, you know about that, yeah. Yeah, but Tesla, man, was into the knowledge, man, and in the end, when Carnegie and those wanted to freeze him out, because he's talking about free knowledge, free energy.
Free energy, that's right.
And found knowledge, Tesla, man, he just sat in the park, you know, in old age feeding the pigeons, man. Because it says that the humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision. Our business is to come to the spiritual platform and let no one drag us down on the material platform, because we can't make it in a real progress like that. We have to come to the spiritual platform. So the goal is reunion with our Supreme Being. So this is how we reawaken to our union. And yoga, you know, means union. Union with our Supreme Being. So the goal is to reunite with our Supreme Being. And we tap into that infinite intelligence and those other qualities of the Supreme Being, omniscience, omnipotence, you see. And that way, as we tap into this infinite intelligence, we can better navigate our way through the so-called Maya. The benefits of this yoga, the goal of this yoga, the four yogas that we're primarily dealing with was the Jnana Yoga, the Bhakti Yoga, the Karma Yoga, and the Raj Yoga. Gathering knowledge, being devoted to this truth, offering everything to this truth, and meditating on this supreme truth. And this is the way we can clean up and reawaken to our original position, which is divine reality. And we do this as an offering to our Supreme Being. And as offering to our Supreme Being and serving our Supreme Being, we love and serve the whole creation. We say we water the root of the tree, and we nourish every leaf, every bud, every flower, every branch of the tree. So by serving our Supreme Being, who is the root of the whole creation, we do the maximum good for the whole creation. One might say you're doing some good, but is it maximum good? We say to serve the Supreme is to serve everyone. To love the Supreme, to reawaken our love to the Supreme Being, is to reawaken our love for everyone. So love is the answer for us. But how can we love? We got to awaken to our love for the source of all living beings, the source of the affection of all living beings.